In 2022, deep-sea submersibles scanning the floor of the Weddell Sea picked up an anomaly. 10,000 feet down, resting in the pitch black, they found the remarkably intact wooden hull of a sunken ship. This ship was lost a century ago, but the story of its crew is even more unlikely. After losing their vessel to the ice, all 28 men managed to survive for 2 years in the deadliest environment on Earth. The expedition was led by Sir Ernest Shackleton. In 1914, he set a goal that had never been achieved: to walk across the entire Antarctic continent, a trek spanning 2,900 kilometers. Shackleton recruited 27 men with an advertisement that promised low pay and constant danger. He made it clear that while they would be part of a historic journey, there was no guarantee of a safe return. Their pursuit of geographical glory was about to be replaced by a singular, grueling focus: navigating a situation where every physical advantage they possessed was stripped away. This tracks their planned route. They intended to land at Vosel Bay, but they never made it. Just 130 kilometers from the coast, the ship was caught in thick sea ice and stopped entirely. Then the Antarctic winter arrived. Temperatures dropped to -50 degrees Celsius, and the sun vanished, leaving the crew in total darkness for months. This was 1915. They had no GPS, no radio, and no way to call for help. The outside world had no idea where they were, and no rescue party was coming. For 9 months, the crew could only wait as the ice around them shifted. Millions of tons of frozen seawater began to compress, putting immense pressure on the ship's wooden hull. Eventually, the ice breached the hull. As the ship began to tilt and break apart, Shackleton ordered the men to abandon their only shelter and move their supplies onto the ice. With the ship sinking, the original mission was over. Staying alive now meant surviving on a floating sheet of ice with no clear path to land. The men established Ocean Camp on a floating floe. To keep the crew focused, Shackleton enforced strict daily routines. They played soccer and held discussions, trying to maintain a sense of order while adrift in the Weddell Sea. But discipline couldn't replenish their food. As their rations ran low, the crew had to make the difficult decision to kill and eat their own sled dogs to avoid starvation. Soon, even the ice was no longer safe. As they drifted into warmer currents, the floe began cracking beneath them, eventually splitting apart to reveal the freezing ocean water below. They launched 3 small lifeboats, spending days rowing through water choked with ice. They were soaked, freezing, and navigating through a maze of white-capped waves and bergs. They finally reached Elephant Island. It was a barren rock, but it was the first time they had stood on solid ground in 497 days. However, Elephant Island was thousands of kilometers from any shipping route. No one would ever find them there. Staying on the island meant they would eventually run out of food and die. Shackleton decided to leave 22 men behind and take a team of 5 to find help. It was a gamble that required crossing the most dangerous stretch of water on the planet. Their target was South Georgia Island, 1,300 kilometers away. They had to cross the notoriously lethal Drake Passage. They attempted this in a 22-foot lifeboat. For 16 days, freezing spray and massive swells hammered the men as they constantly bailed water. Their navigator, Frank Worsley, had to determine their position using only a sextant during rare moments when the sun broke through the clouds. A small error in his math would have seen them miss the island and drift into the open Atlantic. They reached the island during a hurricane, which forced them to crash land on a rocky shoreline. They were finally at South Georgia, but they were on the uninhabited side of the island. They had survived the ocean, but they were now separated from the whaling station by a massive interior mountain range that had never been crossed. To reach help, the men had to climb over glaciated peaks reaching 10,000 feet. These mountains were unmapped and remained untouched by humans. There was no historical record of anyone crossing the interior of South Georgia Island on foot. It was considered a physical impossibility. Shackleton and 2 others began a non-stop 36-hour trek. Without tents or proper climbing gear, they pushed through the snow and over the peaks, driven by the knowledge that 22 men were still waiting for them. Their arrival at the whaling station proved that human willpower could overcome a total physical breakdown when the survival of others was at stake. Shackleton immediately began organizing a rescue ship. It took 4 separate attempts over 3 months to find a vessel capable of breaking through the heavy sea ice surrounding Elephant Island. On August 30, 1916, a ship finally reached the island. They found all 22 men alive, sheltering under their overturned boats and surviving on seal meat. After 2 years of disasters, losing their ship, living on drifting ice, and crossing the Drake Passage, the expedition ended with 0 casualties. Geographically, the mission achieved nothing. They never walked across the continent, and their ship was a total loss on the ocean floor. But the endurance serves as a study in human survival. It demonstrates that when technology fails and the environment removes every advantage, discipline and a leadership that refuses to abandon its people are the only things that matter.
Subscribe our YouTube channel